The Wall Street Journal found that the Bureau of Labor and Statistics predicted that journalism jobs would decline by approximately 4.8% by 2030, after already shrinking from 66,000 news analysts, reporters, and journalists in 2000 to 52,000 in 2019. You can add Nate Barrett to that growing list of journalists who have sought a second career and a fresh start after spending more than a decade in local news across markets in Washington, Wisconsin, and Texas. Barrett traded in his microphone for an opportunity to work with his wife to assist entrepreneurs, on-camera talents, and video production for business media. They help business people and their other clients become on-camera ready to sell more products, increase their business, and having more channels to serve their business people faster through a clearly defined and marketable message. Despite the fact that Barrett is now out of the journalism game, he still has a soft spot in his heart for the profession and is a fierce defender of how vital and viable the role that local and national news plays in preserving our democracy. And he says the ever-changing landscape of journalism is one worth watching to ensure that transparency, integrity, and honor is still preserved within the walls of every newsroom, regardless of the medium they serve. Barrett joined me this week to have a comprehensive conversation about the current and future state of journalism, how he made a successful pivot out of the profession, and he even dropped some knowledge for some inspiring and hopeful journalists who hope to make a long-lasting impression and imprint on the profession of local and national news. As an old and trusted journalism veteran myself, I was quite excited to engage in conversation with Barrett on these very topics. So, without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Take a moment, Nate, if you're ready, to welcome you to the program, my friend. And I'm super excited to learn about your past and present in the world of media and journalism, my friend. Great to see you this morning. And from one journalist from another, it's delightful to meet you. And thank you for a few minutes, my friend.
Man, thank you so much for having me and giving me an opportunity to share my story. I'm looking forward to chatting.
Absolutely. Now, Nate, as I previously mentioned, my friend, you come to our conversation this morning with a background in journalism. I know you were a former news anchor and corporate communications manager, so I'm wondering if you could tell me sort of a 360-degree view of who you are and how it shaped who you are today and the work that you do today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I got the bug for journalism at a young age. I think sometime in high school, I would watch, people on the news, and there would be always the severe weather, and you'd see those reporters, and they would be outside, like clinging to like a flagpole in the wind, and it just seemed really exciting, to do sort of the adventure of it all. And so I got into college, started studying journalism at the school I worked at, the small town. They had a local TV station there, and one year they did auditions. And so I don't quite remember what made me go and apply, but I did, and I fell in love. And by the end of my time in college, I was working full time, 40 hours a week at the TV station. After I graduated, I moved to Wisconsin as a reporter, became a weekend anchor, eventually a morning anchor, and then moved to Texas as a morning anchor. Finished out my contract there, met my wife after doing several years in a row of overnight TV. And for a lot of other reasons with the industry, I was burnt out. Took a while to decide what I was going to do next. Just kind of worked with my father-in-law, went through a little bit of depression, not knowing what I was going to do. I always thought I was going to be a news anchor for life. And so thinking of things that I could do with the background that I had in journalism, I was able to find a job in corporate communications, which was a really great experience for me. And together that blend allowed us to start our company, Dashti Media, where we kind of do a little bit of what I did in corporate communications and news for businesses, helping them create video and do some storytelling like that.
Well, Nate, I have to tell you, you certainly haven't lost your news anchor voice, my friend. That's for sure. Okay.
Lots of years it stays with you.
Lots of voice practice, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, a lot of years with the teleprompter.
Absolutely, my friend. And I'm curious, before I ask you about the company, you started with your wife. I'm curious to ask you about the evolving landscape of journalism, because when you and I went, so I'm 34, and I graduated journalism school about 12 and a half years ago, and it's really evolved into its own sort of animal, for a lack of a better word, in journalism, because traditional journalism, while I'm not saying it's sunsetted, but it's certainly changed over the years, hasn't it?
Oh, so much. And you and I went to school around the same time. And so I think, yeah, when we were in school, social media was a thing, but it wasn't like what it was now. And so that is something that I really noticed, just the way that changed, and the model. It almost kind of feels like what TV did to newspapers however many decades ago. Social media has just come in, and it's just changed so much. You're absolutely right. How journalism, it's kind of wild how it's evolved. I mean, there's so much to it that's changed. But to me, social media was a big catalyst behind all of those changes.
Yeah, and certainly podcasting has become a big form of what I call alternative journalism, because I was just telling my mom the other day, if someone's on to promote a book, they're always on to promote a new podcast, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to ask you about podcasting as well, and how it's really reshaped the way that we think about having journalistic conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's made it so that it's not reserved for just, media isn't just reserved for these big companies. Back in, 50s or 60s, there's just a few TV channels. We all watch the same things. And now anybody can create a podcast. The ability to, with the accessibility of technology and all this stuff, it's made it so, anyone can have a podcast. And so that's great, because I think it allows journalism, to really shine and kind of evolve as, you get to see so many perspectives and stuff like that. So I think podcasting is great. And that's one of the reasons why we kind of left to start our own thing, is because we could see that things were evolving and changing. And this is just kind of it seems like where things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's dive into the company that you started with your wife. You had shared with me that you started it during the pandemic, and after seeing a need in the business world to sort of help business people become TV talent and really improve their communication. So tell me about Dashti Media's vision and mission and why you started the company, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of reasons on why we kind of had started it, but I was working in corporate communications, and I saw the need because in TV, I'm so used to the daily grind and how fast you can turn stuff around. I mean, stories will break minutes before the newscasts, and in the TV world, they're so efficient that they can quickly turn around content and get stuff on air. And I was seeing kind of the traditional video production process that a lot of these companies were going with, and it just was so slow and inefficient in a way. And so I said, it can't keep up with how fast information changes. I mean, information is just changing more rapidly than ever right now. And so we realized that there was a need to kind of have the setup. You see, kind of the green screen we have behind me. Having our own studio allows us to turn around things so quickly for our clients, and we tried to kind of make something really fast like that. And we just seen some of the benefits working in corporate communications. The company that I was working with, we were doing some stuff for AT&T, and I just saw how much they benefited it. And then my wife, she was looking for a job in the pandemic, and she was going to start a new one. And then it got shut down because of the pandemic. And so trying to figure out what we were going to do, a friend of hers recommended this freelancing platform called Fiverr. And so she just made a profile, bought a cheap green screen off Amazon. And the next thing you know, orders started coming in. And so we saw that, hey, there was a really big need for professional on-camera talent in a quick turnaround for the business world. And so one thing led to another, and we just have been growing over the last couple of years, and it just kind of took off.
Yeah, absolutely, and I want to congratulate you on the success, my friend. And I'm also curious to ask you about inclusivity in media, because I shared with you earlier that I was born with cerebral palsy, and I'll tell you a quick story in relation to my next question. So I graduated college in 2010, and it took me 6 years out of college to get my first paying journalism job, because every news director at the time, now it's evolved and changed since I graduated college, but at the time, every news director and radio program director I would go to would tell me, "You're a good guy, we would love to work with you, but because of your disability, we view you as a liability because of working in the media field." Now, it's evolved and changed since then, but certainly representation matters, and people like me aren't traditionally given mainstream journalism jobs. So tell me, in your view, how do you think we can increase the inclusivity when it comes to journalism jobs for folks with disabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this is a great question. I think two thoughts come to mind. The first is how much technology has improved, which is making things more accessible. From all the different things from text to speech, and now you can recreate a podcast with just a cell phone. That's allowing more people to probably participate. I saw this new Adobe has this new AI, which for free right now, it takes any audio, like it's recorded on a cell phone audio, you upload it, and it quickly spits it out as if it was in a nice recording studio. And so some of these things I think are really awesome. And I think that can help allow more people to participate. But then I think also it's on people, like you said, who already have a platform and stuff like that, to encourage more people to participate and to engage and to try to work to be more inclusive, to try to get more people to participate. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that representation matters, and I always tell people that talent is an equally a distributable commodity, but sometimes access to opportunity isn't. So, creating a space where, you have to be what you see. You always tell young people that representation matters, and they have to see themselves, or a representation of themselves power. So I think representation matters. I also think education about the abilities of folks with disabilities is imperative to move the needle of progress forward. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I loved your attitude. If we're, if someone wasn't going to give you the opportunity early on in your career, then you just went and build it, like with this podcast. And now you can create your own, channel. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, life is all about perspective and resilience and overcoming sort of the adversity or cards that you're dealt in life. Our family motto is that we're all given a deck of cards and we have to stack it the best we can to gain our competitive advantages, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about creating a more diverse culture in media, I know you have business people sort of find their inner professional voice to create more sales and create more business. But I'm also curious to ask you about the importance of sort of uh, taking on diverse perspectives in media, and really, because they're all, in journalism school, I don't have to tell you, they're always telling you to find the angle to the story and humanize uh, every every part of local news when you can. So, tell me about the importance of humanizing media in an effort to make it more diverse and inclusive. I'm curious to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think humanizing it is really important. I think one of the things that makes people shine on camera and or just through any sort of media is their authenticity. People really enjoy seeing the authentic, and the relatability. I think that's huge. Even I don't know how many decades ago when there were just a few TV channels, everybody kind of watched the same few programs, where now it's evolved so much, the media, that you see creators with 50,000, 100,000 follows in all these different categories. And I think in some ways it creates a more, there's pros and cons obviously to the vacuum bubbles, but it allows for a really great relatability and humanizing, with the audience, because you can kind of develop a little bit better relationships, I think, with all this new technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nate, I know that you have a decade of experience as a local reporter, as you said, in both Washington, Wisconsin, and Texas. So tell me about local news and your experiences on local news and how that really shaped you both personally and professionally, my friend.
Absolutely. I mean, I think getting to work in news, I always thought it was kind of, being in, you getting to watch the first draft of history kind of unfold. And so it was a very interesting perspective on, so many things, because every day there's news stories and you're sent out, and one day you're talking with politicians, another day you're covering an event to the Pope, or you're covering Hurricane Harvey. And so getting to see all of these different things and getting to meet so many different people, it's a really humbling experience that gives you a lot of perspective. And it's interesting because people always ask, oh, tell me, what was your favorite story you covered, or things like that. And it's like the big moments in your career and stuff like that you covered, you remember them and it was interesting, but you think of the things that happen like behind the scenes. Like my wife always talks about, oh, you were one of the people that you went to Mexico and you got to cover like a really historic visit from the Pope. Whereas my images of that day are like camping out in a van, with the camera crew trying to get a spot and having to make sure we had armed security, and like all those like behind the scenes, like those are the stories that I kind of think of from my times back in news.
Yeah, absolutely. And now transitioning into sort of the business space yourself and working with your spouse must be interesting. So I'll ask you about working with your wife and the challenges and rewards that has. But how do you distinguish the people that you work with as well? Is there a certain criteria of the people you look to work with?
Yeah, so we want to make sure that it's, as far as like we're taking on new clients, that it's something that we can do. Obviously, like, we don't feel comfortable doing, certain things, like we don't want to be doing, health stories to make it seem like, like, oh, you're going to lose this weight if you take this pill. Like, we try to make sure that it's, stuff that we want to work with. But I love that you brought up working with my wife, because that's people always have a fun reaction to that, because people can say, oh, that's a great idea, or oh boy, but it's been really good for us. We've really enjoyed working together, and it's kind of helped our marriage, I think, having things like a business to work on and work through. But for us, we've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if something goes wrong or right at work, you can celebrate or work through it together, right? So it brings you closer together, hopefully, right?
Yeah, it does. And I kind of think, it works because and everyone's situation is different. So I don't want to come out and endorse something for everyone. For us, it's really been nice because running a business together and running a life together are very intertwined. When you have a doctor appointment on one day, or if you have a work meeting on one day, it's the same thing on the calendar. And so for us, being able to plan and budget, and where are our life goals, where are our business goals, and to kind of create a life together, that's been really, really rewarding for us.
Yeah, and just to go back to your passion to journalism, I know it started at a young age for you, and you won your first broadcast award while you were still in college. So tell me about your evolution as a journalist, and again, why you're so passionate about the viability of the profession.
Yeah, I do think journalism is really important. And even though I've chosen not to, continue that as much, now that I've gone to the corporate world, I do think it's really, really, really important. And when I was at my last job, those terms, fake news, that just, oh man, those were tough ones. And it's tough because I do see a lot of things wrong in the media and the format and all those things. But at the same time, like, it's so crucial to our democracy, I feel like, to have local news and information that we can trust. So I do think it plays a really important role, even though I totally understand why people are so frustrated and fed up with their local news stations.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you specifically about the role that local journalism plays in preserving democracy, because, all too often journalism is about being the first instead of being the first one to get it right. So tell me about the role that you believe that local journalism specifically plays in preserving democracy and the importance of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really important, especially at a local level, to know what's going on in your community, to being aware of things, because the things like who gets elected to the various even things like school board and all these things make a really big impact on your community, and so it's important to have people that we trust, that can inform us and let us know what's going on. And so I think that's where things have gotten so bad in the last few years, is the level of trust is at a low. And there's, I can't fault people at home for having some of those trust issues, because there are some bad apples and things out there that are making it harder for people to trust in the people that that should be the truth tellers.
Yeah, and then I'm curious to get your thoughts on how you think the local and national news are interconnected, and how they really play an important role as a combined unit as well.
Absolutely. I think this is a really great topic. So I'm glad you brought it up, because people are always very surprised by how it works with local and national news, because you'll see your local station, whatever city you're in, you're going to have your local ABC, Fox, CBS, NBC. And while they are connected to the parent companies like NBC News, Fox News, and things like that, there's local stations are owned by other media groups like the Sinclairs, the Next Stars, the Tegnas, and companies like that, that they work with these national big companies. And so stories will flow back and forth. There's different, programs and resources like the AP and stuff that your local news can go and pull national stories. And then as a result, your national news kind of aggregates and uses their local news connections. And so they work really well. But people always get surprised by it because they'll see somebody in, let's say Dallas, who's driving around in the car and it has the ABC logo, and they assume that person works with ABC News or something like that. And so while they're connected and they do work well together, they are very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And, then I also wanted to explore with you the idea of what I call journalism resilience, because, the first day of college for me in journalism school, there was a big whiteboard in the middle of my first class, and the message on the board was, when you lose your name, you lose all credibility in our profession. So tell me about sort of having journalism resilience and the importance of really valuing getting a story right, because once you lose your name in journalism, it's really hard to get it back, isn't it?
No, it's so true. I mean, you can think about it just on a personal level. If you have a friend and you catch them lying to you, you're not going to trust them the same way. And so there's been a lot of damage over the years. I think there's lots of different reasons and causes behind all of this that have made people lose their credibility. And I think that media is evolving, and I love seeing the rise of almost independent journalists, like you said, can create their own Substacks and Twitters and podcasts and platform. And like you said, the name is what's so important. It's that people need people that they can trust. And so when people lose their trust in traditional news sites like Fox News or CNN or things like that, and they don't like the fact that these are owned by giant corporations who have ties to advertisers and all those things that shouldn't be influencing journalism, I think having a name that you can trust is so important. You're right on.
Absolutely. And tell me, I'm also fascinated to get your a perspective on your advice to anybody that wants to enter this field, because it's not for everybody, right? So tell me about the advice you would give to someone who's exploring journalism for a career, or someone who's about to graduate journalism school.
It's tough. I mean, you gotta have thick skin. You got to be in it for the right reasons, and you have to truly care, because you can try your hardest, and there are people that are always going to be upset with you, but it is so important, and so always be learning, always be committed to doing your best and doing the right thing, and I think that will help you set you up in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, my final question for you has to do with your own personal and professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
I'm still figuring it out, man. Where it's ever evolving, as I'm trying new things and learning new experiences. If you had met me 5 years ago when I was working in TV news, I would have thought you were crazy if you'd have told me that one day I would have owned my own company and be doing stuff like I am now. And so I'm just always trying to learn and evolve and get better one day at a time and see where this crazy adventure of life takes us all, right?
Absolutely. Life is an adventure, isn't it?
Yeah. It's been a ride.
Absolutely. And then finally, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn. You can search my name, Nate Barrett. I should pop up. Otherwise, if you want to check out our work, dashtimedia.com. You can always reach us there.
Well, fantastic. Well, Nate, from one journalism junkie to another, my friend, I want to thank you for being here this morning and for sharing your perspective on our mutually mutually respected profession, my friend. Journalism is a great field to get into, and I want to thank you for your contributions in the space and how you're helping business people really transform their messages, my friend. Your work in the space and time on my behalf this morning is most appreciated, and I
No.
want to thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me and getting the chance to share my story, man. Great to connect and keep up the great work. Love to see it.